Let's go to Jeremy Diamond, because Jeremy, as Secretary Blinken tries to advance these talks, there's new evidence that Israel's war on Hezbollah is not stopping. Lebanon is now saying that the death toll yesterday, 63 people killed, was the highest in 3 weeks. And we also saw this missile just flatten a building south of Beirut today. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right, Boris. And it's important to note that the Secretary of State's visit is indeed also focused on trying to push a resolution to the war between Israel and Hezbollah, in addition to the war in Gaza. And Israeli officials, though, we should know, don't view the kind of military operations that they're carrying out in Lebanon as separate from the diplomatic pathway. They view the military pressure as ultimately leading to that diplomatic solution. But whether or not that is true, ultimately what is clear is that the Israeli military is conducting some very heavy strikes inside of Lebanon in recent days, with yesterday being one of the deadliest days that we have seen in weeks now inside of Lebanon. Today we saw that this strike on across the street from a hospital in Beirut, the largest public hospital in Lebanon, killed at least 18 people, including at least 4 children, according to the Lebanese Ministry of Health. One woman who witnessed the strike described that there were children playing in a courtyard, and then moments later she saw this missile actually strike that area, tearing, she said, those children to pieces. There was then this separate strike in the southern suburbs of Beirut where we saw a bomb actually flatten 2 buildings in the southern suburbs of Beirut. The Israeli military had actually issued an evacuation order, but it was only 30 minutes before that bomb actually hit those buildings, absolutely flattening the area. You can see the enormous plume of smoke in the wake of this. And of course, there is no sign that any of this is slowing down, as the Israeli military vows to continue pressing Hezbollah, continue hitting Hezbollah targets. And we're also, of course, watching as they are expanding their targets beyond just military targets, yesterday also hitting financial institutions that they claimed were linked to Hezbollah.
Stephen Cook, a senior fellow for Middle Eastern Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. He's also the author of the book, The End of Ambition, America's Past, Present, and Future in the Middle East. Stephen Cook, welcome back to the program. So we have Secretary of State Blinken in Israel. We have U.S. Envoy Amos Hochstein in Lebanon, both pushing for some sort of resolution, some sort of off-ramp here to both hot wars at this point, both also representing a lame duck president. It's notable that the leader of Hamas is now dead, and the leader of Hezbollah also has been killed. And still, it doesn't look like there's much hope for an imminent resolution to either conflicts. In your view, which one do you think is closer to at least coming to a temporary ceasefire at this point?
Well, neither of them, to be completely honest with you. As Jeremy pointed out in his piece, the Israeli government seems not at all interested in a ceasefire. Netanyahu's allies on the right have called for the destruction of Hamas. And when it comes to Hamas, the late Yahya Sinwar, he didn't want a ceasefire either. And just days after his death, one of his colleagues in Gaza, a leader of Hamas named Khalil Hayya, said that Hamas would carry on the fight. So again, we are at a status quo in which all of the parties want to keep fighting, with the exception of the United States, which continues its diplomacy. When it comes to Lebanon, clearly the Israelis believe that the wind is at their back and want to press their advantage. Hezbollah is a much more dangerous foe than Hamas, and that the Israelis don't believe that there is an actual diplomatic solution to be had, and therefore they might as well press their advantage, particularly, as you point out, where the president of the United States is a lame duck, and there are likely to be fewer consequences for the Israelis, if any at all, by pressing this military advantage.
Just in terms of what's happening in Gaza, I mean, there has been a sharp reduction in the amount of humanitarian aid that is getting in, roughly around a 50% decrease. Just give us your thoughts, because Antony Blinken is expected to really reiterate this idea that the U.S. is going to halt military assistance to Israel unless Israel does more to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. I mean, obviously, this has come up multiple times before over the past year. Just walk us through why it's different this time, and what do you make of this strategy by the United States to issue this kind of ultimatum?
Well, the provision of humanitarian aid into Gaza has actually been quite controversial in Israel, and some of Prime Minister Netanyahu's partners have opposed it from the very beginning. What you're referring to is a letter that Secretary of State Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin sent the Israelis a week ago, saying that unless there's a dramatic increase in aid, the United States would start suspending military aid to Israel over 30 days. That was about a week ago. The Israelis have 3 weeks until the United States takes some action if the Biden administration is good to its word. I see the 30-day period as one in which the Israelis are likely to try to press their advantage as much as they possibly can, to destroy as much of Hamas as they possibly can. They are laying siege to Jabalia in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, and preventing humanitarian aid is actually part of this strategy.
Stephen, what is your biggest takeaway in light of the leaked Pentagon documents, which reportedly outline some of Israel's retaliatory plans against Iran, aside from the obvious embarrassment but well-known fact that friends do tend to spy on each other?
Yeah, well, there's clearly people within the U.S. government who are concerned that the Israelis are trying to drag the United States into a regional conflict with Iran. And as a result, leaked some of these documents in order to put a break on Israel's preparations for a response to Iran's ballistic missile strike on Israel a number of weeks ago. I don't think whatever the intelligence that was leaked is going to change the Israeli mindset here. It's not a question of when, it's not a question of if, but when the Israelis will strike. They have said over and over again, they appreciate the American advice, but they will strike what they want and when they want, when they're ready.
Yeah, and all is sort of interconnected. This ultimatum on getting more aid into Gaza, the supply of the THAAD missile defense battery program to Israel in anticipation of whatever Iran's response may be. And again, Israel is set to respond at any moment, reportedly. They've given assurances